So, hi friends, and welcome to Crick Vidya's cricket podcast. And today we are starting a new series of podcasts, which we'll be calling as Legends. In this Legend series, we'll pick one cricketer for each podcast and invite a guest to talk about that cricketer, his cricketing career, his life, and other interesting facts about him. We'll kick off this series with the Australian fast bowling great Glenn McGrath. And to talk about his career, we have with us Bharat Ramraj, who's the editor and writer at Crickbus. Hi, Bharat. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for getting me here.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, for those who are new to the podcast, Bharat was on our podcast a few days back as well. And he talked about his career and journey as a cricket journalist. We'll definitely put in a link to that podcast as well in the description. And all of you interested in writing about cricket should definitely go and watch that episode. And finally, I'd like to welcome my fellow Crickvidya team member, Manju. Hi, Manju. Welcome to the podcast and over to you.
Yeah, hi Sunit. Thank you very much. Welcome friends. Wonderful introduction from Sunit. And as we begin, it gives great pleasure that we are starting with Glenn McGrath. As an Indian cricket fan, we have always been at the receiving end of his heroics. And very few people may remember definitely in the 2003 World Cup, he took the wicket of Sachin Tendulkar. But there is much more to Glenn McGrath, and the reason we all, even all bowlers, like maybe even Avishkar Salvi or Munaf Patel, they idolized him, was his in his formation. So he belonged to a region called Dubo in Australia. So I'll go over to Bharat sir and ask him regarding the early days of Glenn McGrath.
Yeah, Glenn McGrath, as I said, he came from an outback town, sort of in Dubo. He was the third child, I think. And the interesting part of Glenn McGrath is he had A streams in school, I think, but he was known to be very shy at that time. He was so shy that he had to leave school. Think of someone who was known for sledging, he had to leave school because he was very shy. So he's only around maybe at the age of 15 or something, he really started to take up this quick bowling. And even at that time, he was not known for his prowess as a quick bowler. Actually, he played for a club team called Backwater, I think Backwater. But he flopped there, and his club cricket captain at that time, Shane Horsburgh, he basically told him, "You're not good enough to be a bowler." And in a light-hearted tone, even 10 years later or something like that, Shane Horsburgh said the same thing, that he didn't think Glenn McGrath was a good bowler, of course, in a light-hearted tone. And during those days, he used to bowl I think he had a drum or something. He used to bowl by using that drum. So the water drum or something like that. So after that, he in an old caravan, I think he traveled some 284 miles or whatever to Sydney. That is where he tried to make a career out of quick bowling. He was sort of taking up odd jobs and living on even chocolate bars at times, it seems. So that is when Glenn McGrath really tried to become a sort of professional cricketer, and that is when he met Doug Walters, the former Australian Test
That's
batsman. And he was the one who saw something in him, some promise, burgeoning potential in him, and soon Glenn McGrath was drafted into sort of junior sides, senior sides, and he was drafted into the first class team. He made his debut against Tasmania. I think Adam Gilchrist also made his debut for New South Wales in that game, and Ricky Ponting scored at 100 actually, facing Glenn McGrath. That was for Tasmania. And soon he, of course, made his test debut against New Zealand. I think great batch was his, I think, first wicket. I think it was November 9, 1993. I think that was the day he was selected for
he
the
was selected.
Australian team. I think someone called Wilkins. Wilkins had written a piece on this. Not the Wilkins, this is from
Yes.
Sydney Morning Herald, and he had written a
Mm.
piece where it said that he was picked ahead of Joe Angel, who was also running, was also competing for a place actually. This tall Joe Angel. He was picked ahead of Joe Angel because Joe Angel had a finger injury, and he bowled a very good spell against Queensland, where he bowled a few bouncers at Ellen Border, the former Australian captain. So that is how he got into the team, and he got obviously great bats wickets, and from there he just took on. So that's, I think, Glenn McGrath's in a nutshell, in a brief way, that's Glenn McGrath's early career, I would say.
So if you see his career, it is a 14-year-old career. So do you see any other quick bowler having a 14-year-long international career? And what is the secret of that according to you? What are the things he got right by staying injury-free? That
Yeah, there have been other bowlers like, say, Richard Hardley himself. Obviously, nowadays James Anderson has been around for like forever. Obviously, fitness, I think, first of all, you look at, say, Glenn McGrath, his section was very simple. If you look at his biomechanics, obviously an expert would do something better, but he used to run in straight lines. Glenn McGrath, if you look at his hips and shoulders, used to be in straight lines again, and his front arm, very high front arm, still had. This is a very sort of economical sort of run up and action. So obviously open chested action, so it's very economical sort of run up and action. I think he had one abdominal tear in 97 centimeter abdominal tear in that New Zealand Test series. And of course, he had to miss the Test series in India as well in '98 because of that. And then had that one ankle surgery maybe in 2003. And then obviously had that freak injury or whatever in the 2005 Ashes.
treading on the ball in the Ashes.
The ball. So you can look at it very much injury free. I would say his economical run up and action played a huge part. Obviously, he would have worked on his fitness as well. Fast bowling, maybe worked on his running and all. As even the best of fast bowlers and their core, you have to be strong in those areas. So he would have definitely worked his own way in relation to fitness. But I think mainly came down to his economical run up and action, which perhaps played a major role in his long career.
And coming to that 2005 Ashes, he had a stellar performance in the first Lord's Test. He took a 5-wicket haul, and on day one with an hour into to go for tea, Australia were 190 all out, and England were looking really good. They were for no loss. But after that, he had that injury. So had he played, could the outcome have been different, or was it totally a different thing?
That's really difficult to say what would happen. There's definitely a very good England side. It's no doubt about that. Obviously, he returned. There's a drawn test at Old Trafford, but he wasn't, perhaps, even though he took wickets second innings, he's perhaps not at his absolute best. Not too sure. Maybe it could have been a drawn series or something like that. Not too sure, but that was a pretty good England side. Let's say that, and they perhaps sort of slightly overachieved or something. They just got into that kind of, what can I say, momentum. They got that momentum of that victory in Edgbaston, and I'm not too sure whether they would have won that series, but maybe it could have been a drawn series or something.
So regarding partnerships, mostly even in bowling, there have been very prominent partnerships like Larwood and Wassie, or even Valentine and Ramadin. So do you think this partnership with Shane Warne has really had a positive impact? Like their collective impact was really magnified, or how do you feel they would have done if they didn't have this support?
Yeah, Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne, they complemented pretty well. Obviously, they were different in the way they sort of took their wickets, because Shane Warne perhaps was more attacking in his sort of mindset. If you just look at how he used to bowl, he was someone who would be ready to go for runs, as Glenn McGrath once said in his own words, that he never understood why you should go for runs in order to take wickets, to tempt the batsman to do something, like ball a sort of tempter outside off. So they were different, so they sort of complemented each other in that way. They sort of, if you look at that SCG test example, 96, 97 Australia's West Indies SCG test, second innings, I think Chandar Paul was really looking in good touch on a track with a lot of rough outside the off stump. And Glenn McGrath bowled some 18 overs or 17 overs for 35 runs and took 3 or 4 wickets. and from the other end, Shane Warne kept attacking, and finally took Chandler Paul's wicket. So they sort of complemented each other pretty well in that sense, combined in a sort of blended, uh, sort of nicely, and one was sort of different to the other bowler. And in that sense, they really complemented each other. So yeah, obviously, if you look at how they've dismantled sides like England, especially a lot of times they dismantled England, how they dismantled say India in 99, 2000. Obviously, Shane Warne against T10 rarely ever worked, but it still played a part in it. The 2004 series in India, where Shane Warne sort of bowled better, and again Glenn McGrath from the other end really produce the goods. So they have maybe in some sense one bowler wasn't really bowling well against a particular team, and the other bowler, the Shane Warne really came good. For example, in South Africa in 90 against West Indies, West Indies or something in 1995, Shane Warne wasn't really bowling well. Glenn McGrath came good, and then you look at say 96, 97 South Africa, Shane Warne came good. Glenn McGrath perhaps wasn't at his best, so they sort of complemented each other, and really did well, obviously, over whatever, how many years, 14 years, 14 or whatever years.
And coming to impact, like for the listeners and viewers to understand, he has sent 104 batsmen out for a duck. So that has a real bearing on the outcome of a game if it's a top batsman. Like say it could be a Dravid or a Sachin or anyone else. So anything you would like to say in that regard? What was this ability to remove these top names? Like
Yeah, you think of Rahul Dravid, you think of the 99 2000 series, right? He was so relentless at Dravid. I think Dravid also said a few good words about McGrath, that series. Dravid was someone who would leave deliveries outside off. He'd wait for the bowler to bowl that loose delivery. But Glenn McGrath just didn't give anything, absolutely nothing in that series. Rahul Dravid really struggled in that series versus McGrath. You look at, say, Atherton, obviously had a lot of times got him out. I'm not saying he was in the
19.
top league, but top league level batsman. I'm not saying that, but he got him out a lot of times. Look at that 1998 dismissal at the Gabba. Someone like Alan Denal used to bowl perhaps slightly short against Atherton, but Glenn McGrath just went slightly fuller. One of the tests, I'm not, I'm not too sure whether it was Gabba or another test, but he bowled it slightly fuller and got him to edge. So this is something I think Glenn McGrath did slightly better than perhaps a few of his contemporaries. He could spot that difference, spot that sort of weakness in Atherton that used to stay back, that you have to bowl it slightly fuller. He obviously did that to Tendulkar as well. He got him out quite a few times. And look at Brian Lara in the 99 World Cup, he sort of shuffled across slightly and he was so relentless, attacked him and got him out, cleaned up because of the shuffle. And again, Tendulkar in that same World Cup, he just got a little more steep bounce. So he was someone who I think, just like any great bowler, found that sort of weakness, in slight weakness, whatever weakness in a batsman, and just relentlessly attacked him. Obviously, just like any Australian fast bowler, he could sledge as well when needed. He could really do that. So he had that sort of presence, whatever about him, that great presence as a quick bowler. Yeah, of course, quick is perhaps not the right word for him, fast, medium, or whatever. So he had that presence. He was very relentless, ruthless, just like any other great bowler. Just zoom it on your weakness, zero in on your weakness, and just play on it forever. Drip, drip, drip,
so
whatever
since
the Chinese.
since we are in the era of innovation, Bharat bhai, the he learnt a baseball kind of slower ball from McDermott.
Yes.
So anything about that? Any thing you
Yeah,
picked
but,
up regarding how did he manage to do that?
I think it came from this baseball catcher that McDermott used to go to. I don't exactly remember his name. The baseball catcher that would go to McDermott. McDermott picked that
David,
split finger delivery from him, and he bowled it in that Benson and the Tri Series game in Sri Lanka. I think it was Kumar Dharmasen or someone. He bowled a split
yeah.
finger delivery, Tried it even in that one World Cup game he played against Kenya, 96 World Cup game. McDermott, I think Glenn McGrath picked it from there. I remember Glenn McGrath bowling one slow delivery in that Wheels Trophy in '94 against Pakistan final. I think I'm not too sure if that it was that split finger delivery bowled to Waqar Runis, but I'm pretty sure he picked it from McDermott only and started using it and used it again. I think against Nazir Hussain in that Ashes match in MCG match 2002 2003 about this split finger delivery. You really someone obviously Glenn McGregor known for someone who worked really hard on his game. So he would have worked hard on the split finger game where you would hold it in sort of horizontal way and split your fingers, and it just needs a lot of precision practice to bowl this kind of delivery, because if it goes wrong it could turn into sort of full toss, and if batsman picks it he would really dunk it. So obviously you need a lot of precision, and he was known for his precision. He's bowled it quite a few times. Obviously picked it from McDermott, who I think you started using it in the 1995-96 men's and strike series.
So coming to his white ball exploits, he was at the helm of successful World Cup campaigns for Australia. So regarding his impact in the white ball game.
Yeah, see, Glenn McGrath white ball exploits. How to first time I watched him was in the Australia Cup in 1994. But what I really remember about McGrath early days in white ball means to think about that game against India in the quadrangular series in Sri Lanka when Tendulkar scored his first ODI 10. I think he tried to. My memory is a bit vague now, a bit faint, but I think Tendulkar tried to cut one of those deliveries or something, and he just got bit big on him. This is when I thought, yep, this guy is going to do something even in white ball cricket. Obviously, '96 World Cup, we didn't exactly have the greatest of World Cups, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Though he did play a part in that World Cup semi-final victory by when West Indies were 160 for 3 or something. He did dismissed on that ball, if I remember correctly, and then Shane Warne took over. And obviously, '99 World Cup, everyone remembers what he did against West Indies. Australia definitely needed a victory there and took Brian Lara's wicket. And then obviously in the game against India, he just ran through the top order. And again in the final uh, against Pakistan, obviously he came to the party, dismissed Vastula Avasthi, if I remember correctly. The one again that little bit of bounce, steep bounce, same thing 2003 World Cup. Tendulkar came out to bat at the top of the order, and just a little bit of nip, whatever you want to call it, at
Extra bounce.
10th minute flick
Mm.
of the wrist that he had. And we know what he did in the 2007 World Cup when he ended with most wickets. So obviously, and in that era at least, he was great white ball bowler. I don't exactly know how he would have bowled in this era where there's so much of where ODI cricket is just definitely changed like anything. But in that era, what it really did was someone got at steep bounce for line and length, uh, and perhaps batsmen weren't really ready at that time. At least leaving a few batsmen weren't really ready to take on him by charging down the track or skipping down the track. So in that era, obviously, he played a huge role over 3 World Cups, and took Australia to many victories, not just in World Cups. Even if you go back that centenary tournament in right from that time, '95, always used to play sort of a key role. A lot of their victories, a lot of their tri-series victories at home as well, always used to be there. So yeah, he played a pivotal role in a lot of their victories, even in white ball formats.
So coming to the sledging aspect, before the 2005 Ashes, he said that if the weather is good, then Australia win 5-0. Otherwise, maybe 3-0 or 4-0. So what do you think about his dual strategy of sledging? That is, before the series, he will target the main batsman in the press conference, and the other on-field exploits we have heard of his exploits that way.
It's something that always used to be there. I think before every series, he would say you clean sweep for whitewash 3-0 for 5-0. I think it's a part of that mental disintegration, whatever you want to call it. And this is a guy, as I said, who was known to be very shy in his
Mm.
school days. So from there to do all this sledging is something obviously Austrians are pretty famous. You go back to when Marliuk's days or even during Ian Chappell days, they were known for it. And Glenn McGrath just continued that Steve Van Glenn McGrath and company just continued that into the era of 1990s and 2000s. And did many batsmen. He also talked about something about Michael Vaughan as well before the 2003 Ashes, that he felt that Michael Vaughan didn't have many shots in the book or something like that, but he obviously went and
Mm.
scored 300. So he always used to try that with a lot of batsmen. That it, even not just Englishmen, a lot of other batsmen used to try that. He always used to say something for the series, or for the matter, would say 3-0 or 4-0. And obviously, everyone remembers about what happened with Sarvan and. Obviously, Sarvan and Magda. He got into, even if I go back to say 94, 95, this is one incident I remember. I was watching this Australia A versus Australia game, Ben Cincinnati's quadrangular series it was, because Australia were also included. Hayden
Mm.
was, I think, batting for Australia, and Glenn McGrath and Hayden got into verbal duels. So he
Mm.
didn't really spare anyone, even if it was an Australia batsman. Let it be someone who was really known as a sort of bully like Matthew Hayden. He used to go after even Matthew Hayden's of the world. So that is something just carried on what other Australians have done over whatever 30, 40, 50 years period of time.
So towards the fag end in 2007, as the IPL was announced, he came to the Delhi Daredevils, and with his limited set of tricks, which we feel it is limited because it's a T20 era, but that itself was enough for him to finish at the top of the wicket charts for his franchise. So anything you observed he did differently in the T20, or did he stick to the same basics which
He
he had?
basically stuck the same old stuff that he got all those wickets. I think two games I remember. One was against the Deccan Charges. Mohammad Asif also was playing in this game, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken.
Yes.
He took two wickets or something, and Glenn McGrath bowled really tight from the other end. For Indian conditions, sort of attacked the stumps, but just kept it straight. This is something I think really played a key role in Glenn McGrath's success as well. He used to sort of for different conditions, he used to sort of slightly change his methods, because those were Indian conditions. He used to just bowl on stumps, zoom it on stumps, zero it on stumps. Another game was, I think, Royal Challengers Bangalore. I think he was perhaps playing Royal Challenge. Delhi Daredevils were playing Royal Challengers Bangalore, where he took 3 or 4 wickets or something. I think Royal Challengers Bangalore were chasing 192. I think they ended up with 181 or whatever, and Glenn McGrath took 4 wickets. Again,
Mm.
exactly did the same thing. Perhaps use a split finger delivery once or twice. Again, my memory is sort of slightly vague. Took 3 or 4 wickets in that game. Just kept it simple, about line and length, a little bit of bounce here and there, maybe the odd off cutter, which obviously developed in the mid 90s, and ball this kind of split finger delivery once or twice. So just kept it simple. That is what he was known for, this metronome, uh, and that's what he did in the IPL. I don't think he changed much at all. Even if you consider Yorkers, uh, yeah, you can again go back to Wheels Trophy in '94 in Pakistan. I remember him bowling one Yorker to Wasim Akram from around the wickets. I think got him cleaned up in that final. But again, he wasn't really known for Yorkers, barring that occasional delivery. Occasionally would try to nail that Yorker toe crusher, but he wasn't really known for it. So he just stuck to it's a simple formula: bowling line and length, a little bit of steep bounce, maybe a dot off cutter, and yeah, successful.
So all through his 14-year career, we only saw his on-field exploits, but we did not know. Only after retired, we came to know that he is also having a personal problems which he had with regards to his wife who was having breast cancer. And after his retirement, he has supported this philanthropic initiative, the Jane McGrath Foundation. So in the glory of that, they hold their pink test and they have a fundraiser. So anything you remember regarding this in the early days?
About Jain Foundation.
Yes. How
Yeah,
did it come about?
yeah,
Like
I think
we
it was
always
around,
see.
right, if I'm not mistaken, it was around 2005 came into existence. They have some other, if I'm not mistaken, they have some other, there's some other initiatives. One is High Teas or something. Tracy Bevan, if I'm not mistaken, Michael Bevan's wife and Jane McGrath's best friend. She's the one who I think sort of takes care of this. And there's one more initiative, uh, stumps, something related to stumps. Jane Foundation and stumps, they do that I think during every test, uh, pink ball stumps or whatever it is. So obviously they have come out with a few initiatives. Obviously it's a great cause. We have seen Sydney test, known as this pink test or whatever, Sydney test. So he has come out with a lot of initiatives in that sense, great initiatives. So yeah, not very thorough on this subject as far as the Jain Foundation is concerned, but that's what about. I think it has been around for around 14, 15 years. Sadly, Jane passed away I think 2008, if I'm not mistaken. And since then, those initiatives, they have more initiatives are coming. So yeah, it's a great cause, and hopefully to keep growing.
So finally, we come to Glenn McGrath's bunnies. We have discussed Atherton was dismissed 19 times, but if we look at the batsmen who have been undone by him, there is a phenomenal number of left-handers. So do you see any reason why, like in an era when people struggle to bowl to the left-handers, he was so good at it?
I think again they change the angles so well. I go back to that again. Obviously, Wasim Akram wasn't a great batsman; he was just a handy hitter. But again, go back at Wheels Trophy final. He just went round the wicket, wide of the crease, just got it to angle in slightly. Yes, it was near Yorker, but he got it to angle in slightly and cleaned him up. This is something I think he's really good at angles. You look at say Brian Lara would go from over the wicket to start with, you maybe beat the bat slightly on off stump, and then you would go round the wicket, get it to perhaps slightly straighten, get the edge. This is something I think Glenn McGrath was really, really good and just worked on angles brilliantly. Obviously, he got that steep bounce. He had that nagging accuracy, he had that control, unremitting control. But I genuinely believe he's really good at these angles. I think Alan Donald once also talked about this somewhere around 98 or something like that. He talked about how Glenn McGrath was so good with his angles, especially his left-handers. I think this is really something that really played a huge role in dismissing so many left-handers. A few left-handers did well against him early on. Maybe I think it was a game at the Waka in 94, 95 could be when Graham top hooked and pulled him quite a few times, maybe a few times. Saeed Anwar also did well. Even Brian Lara, if you notice, the 99 test series, the final test, he scored a brilliant 100, but he sort of tried to play out Glenn McGrath. Even when he got a brilliant 100 at Bridgetown, it, I'm not saying he didn't play shots as McGrath, but he sort of tried to play out Glenn McGrath. And there was that one spell when the score was around 190 or something, when Glenn McGrath bowled a few good bumpers at Lara, and might have hit him once on the helmet, but again we tried to play him out. So we always knew that Glenn McGrath was someone who could really get him out because of the kind of angles he used to create, slightly wide of the crease from around the stumps, or someone would come very close to stumps on over the wickets. Very, very smart in that aspect. I think Gary Custer's and the batsman, he sort of really troubled. Not exactly, I'm not saying he got him out every time, but he sort of really troubled him. Just like his former pace colleague McDermott did against Gary Custer in 93, 94. He really troubled him in angles. I think that's where Glenn McGrath was so good. It wasn't just about control or steep bounce, but he was a very smart bowler. You can call him in sort of cheetah kind of bowler who was very stealthily, he would just sort of work out a batsman.
So, Bharat,
Thank you, Bharat bhai.
yeah. So, one question from me also. So, do you think in the modern era, Is there any bowler who has similar skills, or do you think there is a similar bowler who is currently there or was there after him?
Don't think, I'm not too sure. The one thing, see, look at say Mohammad Abbas, say like Philander, these are seam bowlers only, but they don't get that steep bounce. They're more of, if I put it in quotes, kiss the surface seam bowlers. If you look at say Mohammad Abbas, a scrambled seam that he bowls with, this is sort of kiss the surface seam bowler. Even if you look at Mohammad Asif, obviously he had similar kind of control, but did something slightly different to Glenn McGrath, because Glenn McGrath got that steep bounce. This is something Michael Holding also talked about when someone asked him about the comparison between Asif and McGrath. He said that Asif is slightly different to Glenn McGrath. I'm not too sure that anyone really going around similar attributes to Glenn McGrath in terms of steep bounce. Will get used to get. I think you have to go back to say Cutley Ambrose. Cutley Ambrose was quite similar to him, just a slightly quicker and perhaps slightly. He was someone who bowled it slightly shorter, or you have to go back right back to Richard Hardley. Though I would say Glenn McGrath got a little more steep bounce than Hardley. I think these two would be similar. Present days Mohammad Abbas in terms of control is sort of quite similar. Jasprit Bumrah, though his action is so unique, yes, some attributes at his best. He's quicker than McGrath, but even though his action is so unique, because his control, if you look at his control at his best, I'm saying, and the kind of kicking bounce he gets, perhaps some attributes to him, but I'm not too sure there is anyone who's very similar to Glenn McGrath.
And also, 2008 was the only season he played in IPL, and 2009 he was sitting on bench for the whole year. And after that,
Right.
he didn't get any. Delhi Daredevils bought his contract, and then he didn't play IPL. So, do you think that was the right decision by Delhi Daredevils after having a stellar season in 2008? Uh, did you expect him to play again in the IPL?
Actually, I expected him to play again in the IPL, but I remember they were, I think, was sitting in a dugout or something, really frustrated in the next IPL of the 2008 IPL, and I don't remember who was this guy who was interviewing him. As you know, commentators interview during an IPL match, any IPL match they interview, and he was really frustrated that he was not playing a single game. And his own quote, in his own words, I'm saying, he said on the lines that they're saying is due to the balance of the side that they're not picking it. Perhaps they were looking at maybe sort of all-rounders or whatever. What was why was that cliché word sort of balance came in? I'm not too sure, because he really did well in 2008 IPL. I think he should have played more of the IPL. But they had this balance or whatever they thought of the coaching staff at the time, and they didn't really pick him after that.
It would have been really interesting actually to see that T20 evolve and that kind of a bowler being there. So it would have
What
been interesting to see whether he improvised, changed his strategies,
what
or
he would
how.
do, that's what I said. What the metronome would do when someone would skip down the track or charge down the track or try the sweep or uh, scoop or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would have been very interesting to see. This is something that I always wonder. What would have happened to metronomes of some other era during this time? Whether they would have sort of survived, evolved as bowlers, or some of them would have just not would have struggled to really survive the current era of modern 80-20.
Yeah. Over to you, Vanju.
Yeah, so only thing is there is this bowler called Chad Sayers. So do you feel that he has the potential? Like I recently saw a video on YouTube with his 62 wickets.
Yes.
So do you feel he's like McGrath, or you feel he doesn't have that extra bounce or the
It's the
gear
same
to?
thing. I think it just comes down that extra bounce, that extra little bit of kick that Glenn McGrath used to get. Not all tall ballers are, yes, tall ballers will get a little bit of extra kick, but if you look at someone like Stuart Broad, this is a very good bowler, but it seems like he has to bowl it slightly shorter to get that same kind of kick. Glenn McGrath seemed to get that kick from a very slightly fuller length. You just look at that Sharvin Campbell's dismissal from the 2001 Waka test. The length was still on a slightly shorter length, but it seemed to be tad fuller, and Sharvin Campbell has scored in the crease. It was just bowled at 126.4 kilometers per hour. Just think of, I'm not disrespecting any other bowler, but just think of someone who bowls floaty stuff at 126.5 kilometers per hour, 126.4 kilometers per hour on a goodish length. Would that batsman got caught in the crease? I'm not too sure. It is just that little bit of extra kick, that extra little bit of bounce that got him a lot of those wickets. Obviously, he had a lot of other stuffs. Then you can bring in, why didn't someone like Joe Angel didn't succeed? He was such a tall bowler. Glenn McGrath's greatest competitor from 94-95. He also got bounced, but Glenn McGrath had other things, like he was a very smart bowler. But I think this little bit of extra bounce really played a key role in the success of bowlers like, say, McGrath or Cutley. Pretty
And
sure.
there was a piece in Wisden written by Stephen Finn as an appreciation post. So Stephen Finn said that he idolized him, so he used to jump like him towards the stumps. So do you find any difference why McGrath never disturbed the stumps at the bowler's end, and whereas Finn had a tendency to hit the stumps?
That's tough to say. I think real biomechanists real coach should talk about this.
Sure.
Honestly, what could be that slight difference? Maybe it could be Stephen Finn. It also became a sort of mental sort of. It really affected him mentally as well. You can say. See, for example, if you bowl a no ball, you just keep bowling no balls because it just affect you so mentally. So it could have affected him mentally that you're sitting the stumps, and he kept doing that again and again, and his action was changed, his run up was changed. Actually, especially his run up was changed, so it affected him even more. So I think this is just sort of messed up fast bowler that messed him up, basically.
Because he was trying to schedule a meeting with McGrath in that series, but it so happened that Australia lost that series, and
Yes.
he was on injury break. So I think not a good time to meet an Aussie after a series loss.
Yeah, see, I think basically finally just sort of fast bowler just got really messed up. That's what happened with Stephen Finn. Whatever meeting you, lot of I think it took suggestions of too many cricketers, coaches, everyone. Uh, Finally, you have to just do what they're good at. So I'll go back to this '92 World Cup. Wasim Akram bowled lots of no balls. Imran Khan finally told him just one thing: just go and bowl fast. If you bowl how many no balls you bowl, I don't care. That's
Yeah.
what I think. That's what Stephen Finn should have done. He was known for bowling 145, 150 kilometers per hour, whatever. Just go and bowl fast. Just once or twice you do it, that's fine. Of course, you might occasionally take a wicket out of that and miss out. That's absolutely fine. Just go and try to bowl as fast as you possibly can. I think that's where Stephen Finn missed out. He still bowls occasionally quick county cricket, one spell or two spells, but it's just not even. I don't think he's even 50% of the ball that he used to do.
So, Bharat, I think Manju forgot to ask you this, but
Uh,
what would be your favorite performance of Glenn McGrath?
right.
The performance of Glenn McGrath, favorite.
So,
Glenn
most memorable, maybe.
McGrath, most memorable. Yeah, I think most memorable would be his spell at Port of Spain in '95. This was the time when McDermott had got injured, Damon Fleming got injured, Australia were left with Brendan Julian. Carl Reckman had to get Carl Reckman into this setup. So that Paul Reifer, they're a pretty inexperienced side. They needed someone to lead the attack. Obviously, McGrath took wickets in Barbados, but then came that Port of Spain test. So this is the third test, not the second test, the third test. Second test was strong. This was, I think, the third test. They prepared a grassy surface for Cutley and balls. He really ran him out. And then there's this Glenn McGrath bowling. I think it's during my holidays, primary school holidays. I was watching somewhere, one name, whatever. And there is this tall, 6 feet 5 inch bowler from Diogo, New South Wales, who just ran in and bowled bumpers at Courtney Walsh and perhaps Cutley Ambrose as well. And this is when I thought, oh my God, this where did I'd watched him obviously in Centenary tournament. I'd watched him in Australasia Cup. I'd watched him in Colombo, Kerala English series. But this guy suddenly it seemed different because he wasn't just getting a little bit of bounce, bowling the aggression at Cutley Ambrose and Courtney Walsh. Not many would do this. He was charging in and he was with a piercing glare. He was looking at these two tailenders. Obviously, Australia got thrashed in that test. Then they returned the favor in the final test when the Watkins took out the West Indies. But that is when I thought Australia found someone who's in just good as McDermott, perhaps better than McDermott. And I would say this has to be one of his most memorable spells. I don't know whether Glenn McGrath would have similar views, but I'm pretty sure he would count it as one of his really memorable spells. Obviously, you think about precision, you look at how he's bowled at Lords, let it be the 97 Ashes game, or more so the 2005 Ashes game on the Pavilion end, how he used that particular end to get a little bit of nip in, or the one to straighten, occasionally to straighten off the pitch. He really did that well. He was known for this precision. He was known for that unremitting control. But just in terms of memorable spell, I think I would go back to that Port of Spain spell as well. Obviously, he's bowled well in Karachi, got a fifer in even in places like Karachi, bowled well in India, he's bowled well like across the cricketing landscape. Yeah, know that. But this one spell, just because how he went after those two fast bowlers from West Indies, that's when I thought, oh my God, Australia have got a really great bowler at their disposal.
Great, great. So Manju, now you can close.
Yeah, so just while closing, reason one thing which we haven't discussed is his batting, and that is something which if we were to invite him for a podcast, he'll spend this whole time talking about his 55 for Nottinghamshire or some of his exploits or his sixes. So not very good with the bat, but definitely a honest trier. He practices hard, and also his colleagues rag him a lot in the dressing room. So I think we'll remember him as a memorable character.
The one thing I remember about obviously this got a few runs here and there in Test cricket, but the one thing I really remember about him was I think Hobart, Hobart or Sydney Test. It might be 95, 96. Pakistan were playing Australia. The wizard Wasim Akram was bowling at the rabbit. Then was getting into shape away, shape in bumpers. One thing you would see, I saw with Glenn McGrath was whatever Wasim Akram was trying, he tried to play with a straight bat. He was missing it. Everything was basically missing everything that Wasim Akram was bowling. But one thing I really appreciated, I really admired in that particular 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. I think Wasim Akram himself got him out fine, but he was trying to play everything with a very straight bat, and that he was still putting, was still that sheer effort that you could see that he was trying to defend with a straight bat. I think that is where you have to give it to him. He still would try hard, whatever it is, batting, bowling. He was not known as a great fielder either, but he could still try hard. Everything, whatever it did, he tried really hard.
So great. I think we had a really good discussion about Glenn McGrath, and it was really good to understand from a perspective of a fan and a person who has followed his career from the starting. Because we, as relatively younger people, we might have started watching cricket at a little later stage, and especially following Australian cricket. So thanks to you, Bharat, for giving us this perspective, and we remembered this great Australian fast bowler, and we thank you for that.
My pleasure.
So thank you, Manju,
Thanks a
and
lot,
for
Bharat.
moderating this, and
Yeah.
we'll soon have some more legends coming on our being discussed on our podcast, and we hope the listeners like it and encourage us to do a lot more work. Thank you, and good night, guys.
And
Yeah, good night, Sunil. Yeah.